That's fine. We just mentioned training. You said you went to a theater school.
No, I did not. No. My training came with boarding school, which is where I developed a real love of theater. We had a couple of, at least two teachers there who loved theater and saw it as a way of keeping 100-odd girls amused and out of mischief. And they would transcribe plays, they would adapt them. We did everything you could possibly imagine. We did musical comedy, we did straight drama, we did grand opera, we did our own plays that we wrote, we did plays in French, we did oratorio. We really covered the map, and it was tremendously instructive. And we did everything along with that, you know, that the art students would do the set, and sewing would do some of the costumes and so on. But mainly it was Miss Marshall who was mainly instrumental in doing this. I owe her a tremendous debt, I think. And Miss MacDonald, who were instrumental in doing all this. And the headmistress, of course, Miss Briggs, was, and even before Miss Briggs's time, which means nothing to any audience now, but the mistresses there were very keen on doing this. It was instructive and, as I say, a way of keeping us out of mischief.
Can you just state what school that was, by the way?
Yes, it was Edgehill. Edgehill, it was, let me think, what was the full title? Edgehill Church School for Girls in Windsor, Nova Scotia, which has now been amalgamated with King's Collegiate and is now King's Edgehill.
Evelyn Gardner, what is that name?
Evelyn Garbry.
Evelyn Garbry?
Yes.
Did the mermaid puppet?
She...
Can you start over actually using her name?
Yeah, Evelyn Garbry was a Welsh woman who moved over to Nova Scotia with her family. She had at one time been married to Frank O'Connor, the Irish writer, and had worked in Dublin in theatre. She was steeped in theatre. She was an extraordinary woman, tremendous energy, and full of inventiveness. She was quite an amazing woman, and she used to talk to us a lot about Micmac legends and saying, "What a wonderful opportunity to bring these to life. Why wouldn't it be wonderful to stage these?" And we would say, "Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, it sounds like a wonderful idea, Evelyn," but she went ahead with it. And she, along with Sarah Lee Lewis, formed the Mermaid Theatre, and there developed these life-size puppets which would produce the Micmac legends, the Glooscap legends, and played them for children and so on. Well, that company became enormously successful. They've toured through Europe, through Great Britain, through Wales, Ireland, England, Scotland. They've toured all through the United States and then continue to tour in the United States. I'm not sure of how much further abroad they went, but they've had an enormous success. And they've moved out of the Micmac legends now into original stories that they produce. But Evelyn was the mastermind behind all that. She became professor of drama at Acadia University. And I think the last thing that she did was a lovely little cameo on Life with Billy. She was a patient in the hospital where Jane Hirschman worked, and there's a lovely little scene where Jane pushes her in her wheelchair down the corridor, and she sings a little song, and it's very, very touching. It's very beautifully done. Evelyn unfortunately died in 1994, I think it was. Yeah.
What does it mean to you that Tatamagouche?
Tatamagouche? All these strange names.
Could you start the sentence using the name? Sure.
The festival at Tatamagouche, I guess, was started by Jack Sheriff. He was another tremendously creative and inventive individual, still going strong in Nova Scotia. But he developed, he wanted to do musical comedy, which was not really being done elsewhere. So he would get a company together and produce them at Tadmagush. He would also do them at the original Kippawa Festival on this old ferry boat, the Kippawa ferry, in somewhere in the valley down on Wolfville area. Because he again was a professor of drama at Acadia University, hotbed Acadia of drama, and but he developed some again a lot of very, very good talent in that area. It was wonderful for people who were really interested in musical comedy and had good voices who could go with that. There were some wonderful people came out of that.
Would you say that it was a step towards professional stage work?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because it was, I mean, they were working up some extremely good productions. It started off with, as everything else did, with the tentative steps, but certainly the group of people that he worked with grew enormously in professional standards. 1 minute.
Dominion Drama Festival here. What role, how crucial was it in supporting the development of regional theatre in Nova Scotia?
Oh, I think it was enormously successful right across the country. It gave us a platform. It gave us the opportunity to see what other areas were doing and how we compared with them, what we had to do to achieve the same status as other areas. We didn't do badly. I remember distinctly the one year that we did The Ladies Not for Burning, and I was not involved in that production originally. It was one of Peter Duncan's productions, and Miriam Newman was starring as Jeanette Jourdemain in this production, and she won the Best Actress Award at the regional festival. And it was going to be another, 8 months, I think, before maybe not that long, but a number of months before the Dominion Festival was being held, and it was being held in Halifax that year. Miriam, it turned out, was pregnant, and she was going to be something like 8 months pregnant by the time this transpired. So it was thought fairly advisable that she have an understudy. So I came in as the understudy for Janet Jourdemain, and I loved the role. I just adored it. It was just a delight, and it was a marvelous company to work with. We came kind of down to the wire, and it was the night before the dress rehearsal, and still Miriam hadn't shown up. This was for about 2 weeks. No sign of Miriam at all. And I thought, dear heavenly day, if she doesn't show up tomorrow night for the dress rehearsal, I will be doing this for the Dominion Festival. A bit daunting. She turned up for the dress rehearsal. I could have killed her. And she went on to get the award as the Best Actress for the Dominion Drama Festival that time. My other, I had a number of experiences with the DDF, but the other more memorable one was when we did Amphitryon 38 after having survived the fire at the Theatre Arts Guild. We went out, we had the regional festival in Halifax, and it turned out that Leon Major was the adjudicator for that festival. And he was very taken with our production, and he gave some very instructive criticisms, was quite charming and delightful and full of enthusiasm, as Leon is. But one of the most marvelous things that happened, those times that you kind of have a feeling that something is going to occur, something's going to happen, just simply comes out of the blue and you don't know where this comes from. Well, I had a feeling that I was going to be singled out for this. I was quite in love with what I was doing as Alchemina. Anyway, when we did the regional festival and Leon came up to do the adjudication, he said, no, I think the role of Alchemina was absolutely terrific, or whatever it was he said. Now, don't you think so? And he called me out for my own curtain call. It's happened. it's actually happened. I told him that a few years later, and he said, "Oh, good grief, I wish I'd known that." He said, "I've never called you out." Leon didn't believe in stars, ever. That was when he set up the Neptune Theatre. It will be without stars. There will be no stars in this theatre.
Did you get any awards or recognition around that time too, during your amateur period? Were there awards and anything like that?
Yeah, I did get the award for best performance with Amphitryon 38 at the regional level. We went on to do it in Vancouver at the Dominion level, and I wasn't successful there. Also, well, there was sort of later, I guess it was beyond the time that you're looking at, but I did get a Nellie for a radio drama that I did.
You were eventually invited as one of 14 core Neptune members, eh? How did that happen? Did you stay in touch with Leon? Or
No.
You flew back into town? Was it a complete coincidence? Can you take that story from the top?
I got a telephone call from Leon, and he said, he reminded me that he had been the adjudicator, and he said, I'd like you to do the four-poster. Would you like to do that? I said, Leon, that's a two-character play. He said, yeah. Do you want to do it? I said, yes, of course. And so I was cast in Major Barbara as Sarah, played in that July the 1st, 1963, opening night. Hot, hot, hot. It was one of those unusually hot summers in Nova Scotia. The cast, most of them from Ontario, were sure that they were coming down to the ends of the earth when they came to Nova Scotia, and they fell in love with the place that summer because it was really so nice. We said, of course, well, it's like this all the time. But yeah, I started rehearsals that I think we opened in July, so I suppose we must have started early in June. And I rehearsed part of the day for Major Barbara. And at the same time, I mean, we started off, when Neptune began in 1963, it was a year-round repertory theater, the first repertory theater in North America. And so there was a company, a core group, that was cast in various different plays. And I mean, people like Don Greenhalgh and Ted Follows were doing Major Barbara, leading roles in Major Barbara, then on to do leading roles in Mary Mary, and in, what was it? I think it was Amphitryon. A marvelous Greek tragedy. No. It'll come to me. It's gone. But that, you know, and then so we were rehearsing one play in the morning, another in the afternoon, playing a third at night, and it was a busy time for those who were doing three plays. Just unbelievable. I was doing the four-poster at the same time, which with Bunny Barons. Just a simply tremendous actor, lovely person, and enormously helpful. And I think, in retrospect, he deserves a lot of credit, because I was coming from amateur theater. There was a lot that I didn't know. Maver Moore, who was directing the play, and in that first, the 3 weeks of rehearsal, I learned more than I had in all the years I'd been doing amateur theater. It was a crash course. It was wonderful. They were simply delightful, and I think very, very patient.
What was your professional debut?
Well, I like to say it was the four-poster, but it really was the Major Barbara. It was a couple of weeks later, I think, that we opened the four-poster.
It had been like 4 years since you had the local Best Performance Award.
Yeah.
How did you stay busy in between?
Doing amateur theater, doing radio. We did a lot of radio. And we did television at that time. There really was live-to-air television. Bert Piggott was doing one of the plays that I was in, The Alchemist. And he was the alchemist, and at one point had to go flying down these stairs, racing down to his chemistry laboratory. And Bert, at this point, was well into his 70s. He was an old man, approaching 80, and he fell, live to air, he fell down the stairs and got down to the bottom of the stairs, picked himself up and carried on as if nothing had happened, as if that was the way it was supposed to have happened. I mean, he was that kind of pro. He was amazing.
So when I just asked you what was your professional stage debut, you had obviously been doing professional work in broadcasting.
Yes, yeah. Started with radio in the 50s, and then branched into television when the opportunity arose there.
What kind of opportunities in television were there? Like what titles, what topics?
They were doing a television series called Mrs. Bing's Borders. I wasn't involved in that one, unfortunately. That was sort of underway before I kind of got started. That would have been really nice to have had a series. But I did 2 or 3 of the television productions, live broadcasts, and then eventually did Peter Duncan's The Lady in Black, which was it was a good 2-hour film, it seems to me. It was a long production.
Isn't there a sort of AKA?
Yes, there is. Yeah, it was dubbed The Lady in Red by CBC because it did go so far over budget. Peter had some wonderful ideas, but he didn't have a great deal of thought for the bottom line. And if it was something, he was very expansive. And he said, this will be wonderful. We'll do it this way.
Theatre in the round, what does that mean to you?
Well, again, this was Peter who began this. We were still working in the Pros, and he thought he'd come back from England, which actually is where he got his pseudonym, Robert Alban. He was playing a role in the West End under the name of Robert Alban, and thought it sounded rather nice and fitted him well, because he did very well with the play. And so he brought that back with him to Nova Scotia. And unfortunately for him, it just never stuck. We always called him Peter Duncan. But anyway, Peter brought this concept of theatre in the round, and it made us more aware of the audience and how we could relate to the audience. I mean, we were working right in the audience, basically. So it gave us a respect, I think, for the audience that we might not have had from the distance of the proscenium stage. Yeah, he did that. Peter did a lot of work in Halifax with Theatre Arts Guild, as a radio drama producer, and then as a television producer, by which time he was nabbed by Toronto and taken up there.
When you mentioned the Neptune, so let's take that from the top a little bit. The Neptune site, do you recall the previous, the Garrick Theatre?
Yes, it was a place you never went. I mean, during the war, it was frequented by all the sailors, and it was a kind of a rundown, seedy place by that time. So, I mean, I had never been inside the Garrick Theatre. I mean, that was completely verboten. So when Neptune began, when Leon was down at one point, called me and said, "Come on down and see what we're doing with this theatre." And I can remember going in and standing in the balcony and looking down. I mean, it was in just massive chaos, and seeing where the stage was going to be was all dug right down and so on. It was remarkable. He was so excited about it. This is where we're going to have this and this. Can't you see all of this happening? And it's going to be marvelous. And the Juliet's here and so on. It's all going to be wood. And he was just filled with enthusiasm and to feel all that and to see the way that this was all developing was very exciting.
You quoted as having looked over the site itself, as you just mentioned. What were your mental thoughts about as you looked up and around, and were you guaranteed work at this point?
Yes, at that point. I was cast in Major Barbara and the Four Poster, and while I was not strictly a member of the company, I was one of the Halifax actors involved with it. Still, there was promise of more work, and it was a new venue. It was a new opening. It was a whole new era that was opening up for us in Halifax. Just a different level altogether from what we had done before. And there was a kind of a feeling of, gee, we really are actors. We really are part of this incredible tribe of people, these gypsies. We're all a part of that.
Pinch yourself kind of thing. Is this really happening? There are other Nova Scotia cast? Mr. Brown?
Yes, David Brown, whose grandfather incidentally built the Garrick Theatre. So he was sort of all a part of that. Brownie and I did a lot of work together. We were friends and colleagues at Theatre Arts Guild, and so it was wonderful when he came to the Neptune Theatre and did some fabulous work there, really fabulous work. We did together the four-poster again later on, and same time next year together, which was enormous fun. Brownie has a wonderful sense of humor, a wonderful way of looking at life, and he's extraordinarily intelligent, and he just keeps you amused on a totally other level altogether. He's great fun to tour with.
There's Mr. Rubin as well.
Ed Rubin, yeah. Ed has been with that theatre since, I think, the very, very beginning. He's still on the board. Ed was, again, an alumnus of the Theatre Arts Guild. And we did Arsenic and Old Lace together, among other things. I can't remember whether he did The Crucible or not. Can't remember that. But Ed did some very fine work at Neptune. He was working full-time. He had his own business in Halifax, so it was not as easy for him to say, yes, I would. I think he would love to have done more theatre than he did.
So we're fortunate to have an anecdote filter down. He walked off the front of the stage in Arsenic and lay on the audience or something like that. Do you remember this?
That was Ed.
That was Ed Rubin. Did he supposedly, for a laugh, he went the wrong way off stage and lay across a couple of audience members? Do you know that story?
I think it was Ed, but no, I can't recall the story.
Okay,
yeah.
Just prompting you there.
Yeah.
And there's Mr. Murray as well.
Dr. Murray. Dr. Murphy. No, you're talking about David Murray. Yes, yeah. David Murray was from Pictou, and he owned a flower shop in Halifax. Did some wonderful, wonderful radio. He was very fond of opera. He had his own radio show at the opera, and would discuss lovingly all of and explain so easily to everybody what opera was all about and how the plot worked and what was happening in this, and then introduce arias and so on. He was a very, very, very special person, and did some fine work on Neptune stage.
You mentioned Dr. Murphy.
Yeah.
Could you tell me more what you know about him?
Well, Dr. Murphy. And what?
And his interests.
Yeah, Dr. Murphy was a surgeon in Halifax. I first knew him as a student nurse. And then he became a president of Neptune Theatre. The first? I'm not sure. I think the first. All right. And he was almost single-handedly, not quite, but almost single-handedly responsible for not only the beginning of that theatre, but enabling it to keep on, because we went through some very, very rocky times. There were many, many times when it looked as if the theatre was going to close, and he fought long and hard for that theatre, and helped ensure through his contacts that it would continue to produce. But he was also a playwright. He used to write episodes for, what was the medical television, Dr. Kildare, and there was another one. Anyway, one of the medical shows that was coming out of Los Angeles, and he wrote a number of scripts for that. And then he wrote The Sleeping Bag for Neptune Stage. And David Renton and Ron Bishop and I were cast in The Sleeping Bag. And it was a very, very difficult play to kind of determine characterization. We worked for a long time trying to develop our characters. David and Bish finally got their characterizations, and I was totally at sea. I really didn't know what to do with this thing. And finally I hit on it. This woman was a dumb blonde. So I went to Leon and I said, would it be okay if I had my hair bleached blonde? And he kind of, well, yeah, but you really want to do that? And I said, yes, I do. I think that's really what is necessary for this. My husband was in Newfoundland at the time, and I went to the hairdressers, and I sat there watching my hair bleach out, and I could feel my personality diminishing through the whole process. I became mousy. It was extraordinary. It was a really strange experience. I couldn't have a wig, incidentally, for this, because I had to brush my hair vigorously with my head down. That was all part of the staging. So it had to be my own hair. So there was no other choice. I had to have the blonde hair. It was quite sensational. It worked like a charm. It was exactly what was looked for in that, what was needed for that characterization, and I had it from then on. It was quite successful, being a sort of a light bit of fluff. Audiences adored it. Nathan Cohen thought it was quite delightful. He was very complimentary about that. And then we revived it, I think a year later, and toured it across the country in 1967. This time not as blonde, because in my anxiety to have it looking as totally naturally blonde as it could possibly be, because she would not dye her hair. This Venice Smith would not dye her hair. It had to be really look blonde, so I was very careful about the dark roots that were growing in, and over-bleached it once. So I started losing my hair, and I would go like this, and I'd pull out handfuls of hair. It was terrifying. So I had to stop that. So the next time we did it, in 1967, I was my normal color, or what was as close to it as possible after having been bleached out.